Debo Dojo.
This episode is brought to you by Woven Luxury Timepieces. Buying or selling a luxury watch these days is more complicated than ever, and with so many retailers and purchasing channels, it's hard to know what's what. More importantly, it's hard to know who to trust. People consistently ask me the best place to buy a watch, and the answer is Woven, hands down. They're the only company I would buy or sell any of my watches with because they make everything so easy and transparent with their industry-leading expertise and service. Woven is the largest gray market watch dealer in Texas, with the storefront at the Shops of Legacy in Plano. They offer domestic and international services, and their team can help you anywhere in the world if you're looking to buy, sell, or trade one of your watches. These guys are serious about their craft, and you can trust in their services with their authenticity guarantee, free shipping, and warranties. More importantly, they act as true advisors for their clients and will steer you in the right direction so you make the right choice. Woven carries all brands of luxury watches, including, but not limited to, Patek, Vacheron Constantin, Audemars, Rolex, and Richard Mille. To get started, just head to woven.com to browse their inventory or fill out their contact form so a member of their team can reach out to schedule a personalized experience. When you reach out, do me a favor and tell them Debo sent you. Good to go? Ken Fukunaga, welcome to the dojo, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine because I grew up watching Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z every day after school. I'd go home, watch Toonami, and I'm pinching myself to be here with you right now because you're responsible for that, for my entire generation and other kids, and as an adult, it's amazing to be sitting here with you today. So first off, thank you for your work to bring Dragon Ball and other media to the U.S.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Yeah, it's been good for both of us.
It's been fun. Absolutely.
Oh my God, Taco!
This episode is brought to you by OMG Tacos. With 3 convenient locations across DFW in Richardson, The Colony, and Salina, these tacos will literally make you say, oh my God. Head to omgtacos.com to order online today. So I guess just to get started today, walk me through how you got started. Mm-hmm. Let's just start with what were you doing before Funimation, and then we'll just start to slowly unravel your history with Funimation. So you were born in Japan, right?
Yeah, I was born in Japan. Moved to West Lafayette, Indiana when I was about 4 years old. Went to West Lafayette High School and then went to Purdue University. Got my bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering from Purdue. Went to work for IBM Boca Raton after that. I had several other companies and summer internships before that. But then after college, IBM Boca, that's where the IBM PC was invented. And this is the mid 80s. So, it was kind of the thing there.
That's a good time to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but I didn't like being a pure technical person. So I decided to leave and get my MBA. So I went to New York City and got my MBA from Columbia University. After Columbia, I became a consultant with Anderson Consultant, which is now Accenture, in their strategy group. So strategic management consultant. And then I got poached over to Silicon Valley by Tandem Computers. And at that time, Tandem had built themselves fairly quickly into a nice couple $1 billion company. And it was a unique position for me because it was a sort of a chief of staff type position where you report to a top exec that and help run his division. And then they pop you out and you go run something your own. And so it was a great experience. Accelerated experience, I would say, up the chain, up the ladder. Then I popped out and was a product manager of a bunch of their software products, and then realized that Tandem's future didn't look so good. They were a very proprietary system. They're all fault tolerant, which was great, but I was seeing what the competition was doing. They were starting to everybody was going to open systems like Unix, and they were just cobbling together 3 Unix systems and running in parallel. So if something went wrong, they just toss out the unit and plug in another one.
You said all fault tolerant,
Right.
What does that mean?
So fault tolerant meaning it really never could go or should go down on you ever.
I see.
So the people that were buying them were all the stock exchanges, the major banks, the airline systems, all were being run on
Interesting.
on things that couldn't go down.
Okay.
And so that's how they had designed the overall architecture of the system. And it's not just physical stuff, obviously, but it was really in the software, how they built their relational database and their operating systems so that it would catch its own faults and correct itself automatically internally.
I see.
So
the company is starting to not go in the trajectory that you wanted.
Well, it's just that I saw that the competition was gonna probably damage them quite a much. I think they knew where they had to go. The problem was everything was so legacy proprietary that it seemed to me it was going to be impossible to get out of that bind. And which is what happened, by the way. And so it was too big of a engineering challenge, I think. So started looking around. This time I wanted to go to a smaller company. I'd worked at several big ones now, and probably a startup in the high-tech industry. But as I was looking around, this is obviously before I left Tandem, but I was looking around and this unique thing triggered me, which was that I lived in 8th grade a full year in Japan and I had seen all this great manga and anime. And I was wondering, why in the world is that stuff still not here, this many years later? And so I started inquiring into that. And then fortunately, my uncle, Nagafumi, is in the entertainment industry in Japan on the live action side. And so he said, well, look, I'll just set up a meeting with you and the animation division of Toei. And so I met with their agents in California, in Los Angeles. We started discussions. And finally, after looking at their entire catalog, I said, well, this is the one title I really want, Dragon Ball Z. And that's how it started.
And what year was this when you first met with them?
1994.
94.
Right.
Okay. And so Funimation, you've founded that in what year?
Well, technically in 1994 because
94.
we acquired the rights for Dragon Ball toward the end of that year.
And I think I feel like you definitely know this. Like Dragon Ball, the one on this manga right here, that was like mid 80s, right?
Right. That's
and
right.
that came out, and I think Z came out in like 89 or 90, something like that.
Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 years later, right? 4 years.
So when you were in 8th grade in Japan, do you remember what year that was?
Wow.
So that would have been like, I guess, when Dragon Ball was out. So did that manga make a big impression on you, or
manga? No, it wouldn't have been out by then.
Okay.
And so, because we're talking early 70s.
Okay.
So early 70s, and so it wasn't out, and so
that's about the time when I think the original Gundam was coming out.
Yeah, those are the type of titles that were out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you got to the States...
I remember my favorite one at the time that I was watching on TV while I was living in Japan was Uchu Senkan Yamato, Battleship Yamato.
Battleship. I have never watched that, but I'm familiar with the title.
Which is a 70s show. So
yeah. Did that one ever progress beyond the initial one? Are they still doing that?
They've made some. They've made some movies. They made a live action movie. They made an animated movie in CG. I don't think they really... I think they made a follow-on series as well, but I don't know as much about that title because it just didn't really perform in the U.S., to be honest with you.
So when you got to the States, was there like a vacuum in your soul or your heart after that? Like you saw it for a year or two in Japan,
right?
Like were you trying to consume Japanese media when you were here?
Well, it was
Or
so
when you
hard to
came
get back then. It was
Yeah.
basically impossible to get, right? I mean, there's no internet, there's no um, stores or bootlegs even being sold, So it was a while before finally some smaller companies started just doing subtitle VHS tapes
Okay.
of the product. And so, because remember, even VHS wasn't that big back in the 70s.
No.
So that whole VHS craze started in the 80s, where home video in general started in the 80s. And so, um, yeah, there's really
There's
no
just no
way.
way.
Yeah, not really. There's no real access.
Yeah, when I was born in 91. So when I was like watching Cartoon Network and Toonami, which is where that was the primary place to watch it, or at least for me, that's where I saw it. Everyone I knew, kids, they were getting blank VHS tapes and they were trying to record it so that they could watch it later, or like,
Sure.
I think it came out around 5 Eastern time or something like that, 6. And like if you had a game or a practice as a kid, like all my friends would record it so they could watch it, like, and that was in 98, 99.
Yeah.
And so that's
right.
That was like just becoming a thing.
That was right. Yeah. That's because it went on Cartoon Network in 98.
Okay. Yeah. So when you left Tandem, where did you go next? What was next for you?
Well, that's when I started Funimation. So I started Funimation. Yeah.
And that seemed like a big risk, right? At the time, because you didn't know if it was going to work.
Oh, yeah, it was a huge risk. But one of my friends, family friend, a friend of mine that was actually an electrical engineer that also was on the same computer design team in Boca Raton, IBM. His family, I had left for my MBA. He had left to go back to his family businesses in Texas here, at Decatur, Texas. And that family, I was talking to him, and we had stayed in touch and were friends and everything. And I had told him about this idea of, hey, I think, there's several big problems with Hollywood. And one is that unless it's a known sequel, a new original show, who knows if it's going to work or not? And B, it's expensive as heck to make it, know? And so you're taking a lot of risk in Hollywood. And so I said, well, why don't we just take a hit from an anime hit from Japan that's already a known hit and buy it for 10 cents on the dollar, so we don't have to spend all the production costs. So that was the model that we started with, right?
So that makes a lot of sense, right? Because you don't have the production cost of like hiring animators or screenwriters, anybody. You're like, hey, this is an existing formula. Let's just license it.
Yes,
essentially.
So it's a license. That's right. All we had to do is translate, dub it, and then there's some video work and stuff, but basically then release it. So.
And that was the Kokenauer family?
The Kokenauer family.
Kokenauer.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he was from Texas, and then you approached him, and they invested in the company?
Yes, that's right. So they're the put all the seed capital into the company. And then we never had to raise any debt or equity after that. So there's never dilutive events for our company. And so we just grew it from there, and then until we sold it.
So when you got started, you raised the seed capital. Toei said, here's our price, whatever that was, made the transaction. Like, how did you navigate where to start, or like the contract, everything? Because you were not necessarily in the business, right? Did you have any mentors that brought you up and said, hey, again, this is what you need to be looking for? Or I guess maybe your uncle kind of pointed you in the right direction on that, or?
Well, no, because he knew the Japanese system very well, but he didn't understand the Hollywood side at all, or the contracts, these type of contracts. So we talked to, obviously, people in Hollywood that know how to license, foreign content and things like that. So, it was just through a lot of conversations of learning the business very quickly, that it took. We never had a mentor, though.
So I guess you license it. right? Me being in your shoes, and then it's like, well, now what, right? Because it's like anything else, you have to have distribution.
Right.
So did Cartoon Network and Toonami happen almost immediately because you had a license, or where was the first place that you started? I guess was it syndicating be the right word?
Right. So in those days, the only way to distribute an animated series is through television, right? And you got to remember that this was really pre-cable. So when we first picked up the show, so I mean, cable didn't get hot till years later, a few years later. So what was happening at least in the kids industry is that you really had to go to the major networks, ABC, CBS, Fox, that stuff. Well, nobody wanted it. So we made our pilot, right, in English and everything. And nobody wanted to pick it up, but there's very much a not invented here attitude towards kids animation because, the American animation was higher quality and, they didn't see a reason to pick up something that had some, cultural things in it that they were worried about wouldn't translate. And so what happened is we had to go into syndication, as you said, and how syndication works, I guess. And so, okay. Well, syndication basically meant you went to the ABC, NBC, or independent affiliate TV stations in every single DMA market and sold one of the stations to pick it up, right? And so you go to Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and every city you can, get one of the stations that covers that territory and try to get it to pick it up into their kids block.
And that was on a local basis?
Yeah. So each station would just cover that local territory, right?
Okay. Because it's like a parent company, but then they have local broadcast channels.
Well, that's because these are affiliates of the major networks like ABC. So ABC didn't own that station.
I see.
They were just an affiliate. So it's like being a franchisee.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like
that's like
McDonald's
how,
franchise.
for me, like real estate works. Like for residential real estate, you get licensed by a local like affiliated enforcement board to be a realtor, but it's still like one big National Association of Realtors company.
Yeah, well,
similar.
It's a lot more like I said, like a McDonald's franchise, right? So okay, now you got that, TV station exclusively for Chicago, let's say, and you're an ABC affiliate. Well, ABC only gives you enough program to do prime time and whatever, Good Morning America, or whatever it is that they do. All the rest of the slots you have to fill on your own as an independent station. So that's when they pick it up in the syndicated market.
I see.
So they, most of the game shows were syndicated. So you pick up Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune and whatever.
Like The Price is Right.
Yeah, stuff like that. Or the soap operas oftentimes. Well, no, some of the soap operas were part of the affiliate program. But there's a lot of stuff. Local news is your own, that kind of stuff. Before the network news, before ABC's network news, you had usually put on your own local news, things like that. So that's how it worked, right? And so usually a lot of them had kids blocks as well, and so they had to fill those up as well. So that's
what was the first station that you went to?
So the way syndication works though is if you don't really cover about 80% of the U.S., no major national advertiser would advertise with you. So if you don't really hit that 80%, it's gonna fail, basically, from a monetary point of view.
The advertising, that was the revenue generator.
That's right. It's all ad revenue.
Did you have to go to each local broadcast channel and get like a letter of intent, and then you take that to the advertiser?
Yeah. So you clear the market by getting deals, one station at a time for each territory, right? Chicago could be a CBS affiliate, New York could be an ABC affiliate, San Antonio could be an independent station that doesn't even have an affiliation with the network. Anyway, so you get that all lined up. And so there were companies, that's all they did for a job. They were syndicators.
Oh.
So they're famous for clearing shows throughout the market.
Okay.
And so we, hook up with one of those, they sell it, they try to clear 80%, and then you get a share of the ad revenue.
I see.
That's how it works. And so We did that with Dragon Ball, not Z. Dragon Ball first, because that Toei wanted us to absolutely start with Dragon Ball. They did not want us to jump to Z. So we did.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and it doesn't, because remember, this was a mid '80s title in Japan, and it's already mid '90s by the time we're trying to release it here. So,
and the animation quality was definitely a little less in the '80s. You can kind of tell in '80s.
That's right.
Anime.
That's right.
I see.
That's right. And we felt also that Z culturally was a better match because it was so action packed. You know. Dragon Ball story is phenomenally good.
It's so good.
It's so good, yeah. Actually, I think the story is often better than Dragon Ball, but the action was key, we felt, for a good action adventure show like this. And so
it's funny too, because there's little things, if you've ever watched, I know you have, but for our listeners, if you ever watched Dragon Ball, that Goku does that are like a little culturally I guess like risque. Like there's actually a high amount of like sexuality in the show, especially towards women. So was that like a hurdle that you had to cross?
Not in syndication, because there was a little more leeway. In cable also there was a little more leeway, so we did have to edit it for Cartoon Network. For network TV, ABC, yeah, we would have had to edit a lot of it. The show.
I think it's so funny. Goku, like, are you a girl or a boy? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And he goes around to everybody. And
yeah, but remember, especially back then, there's also like, you can't have facial impact, like a punch or something, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, you know, if you've watched Dragon Ball Z, it's a little tough to get around that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those kind of things.
That's really, I didn't know that. Yeah. And that was even in the Cartoon Network days?
Well, remember, that's a cable channel. This was if you went on a major network.
Okay.
Cartoon Network tried to use its flexibility to allow a lot more of that, but we still had to manually paint out blood, for example, most of the time.
And that was in the original Japanese?
Yeah, of Z, yes, for sure.
So you had to dub the episodes in English.
Yep.
And as in my research, as I understand it, you were originally using a Canadian company, but you took that in-house.
That's right.
Eventually.
That's right.
Like, what? Talk about that challenge. I mean, because you had to match, I guess, when you started in-house, you had to match the same tonality as the original voice actors, right?
That's right. That's right. Yes. Well, we quickly realized that the cost of outsourcing that was just super high, you know, and that we could just do it way more efficiently in-house. And so we brought that in-house, and especially, of course, our vision was we were going to buy more shows and other things. And so, you know, we may as well, you know. And so that's what started that process when we brought it in-house. But a lot was driven by cost, you know, because the quality was the same, but the cost was just too different. But usually, every time we brought something in house, there has to be some really important value add to us to do it in house instead of just subcontracted. And so that was the case when we brought home video in house, you know, and things like that. So
when you say value add, you mean like an additional revenue stream, like?
Well, it had to either make us significant extra margins, like doing our own dubs, significant cost savings, or it had to. Or in the case of dubbing, what ended up happening is we had to be able to do it twice as fast as anybody else could, because we started getting so many titles so fast that we couldn't, you know, you couldn't outsource fast. You couldn't just get it done, you know, with the right quality consistently across all your shows with that many shows coming through the pipeline and things. So speed became another huge value add for us, which was also very important. So cost was the first instigator. Speed was another one. But in home video, it was also a matter of home video has a significant margin. And so taking it over in-house, we felt we could market it better, release it better, and capture all that margin.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than listening to a bad dub.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Did you guys ever license Rurouni Kenshin? Was that you?
No, we originally didn't get the animation, but we got, for example, the live action movie and some of the after,
Okay.
the later products on that.
Because just as an example, the original Rurouni Kenshin dub that I watched from the 90s show was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's another one from another company that it's just like, whoa, like this is almost unwatchable.
Right.
So you guys eventually got to a point where you were doing simulcast, right?
Right.
And so that's what you're talking about with the speed.
Yeah, that's especially where the speed made all the difference in the world, because you got to subtitle it within. By the time they broadcast in Japan, you have to subtitle it, read, do the script, English translation, and then subtitle it within a day. Yes,
that's a challenge.
Yeah,
and then you have to get it out to all the stations, right?
Well, then it was just our own streaming platform by then.
Oh,
for
by
streaming, then. yeah, because we didn't. Most of our shows, we sold some of our series after they were fully completed to Netflix and Amazon and some players, but we had already realized that we needed to control our destiny on that streaming platform. So we were also started building our own streaming platform, and then we started making sure it got it first. And then, if Amazon or Netflix wanted it after the whole thing is streamed, the whole series is streamed on Funimation's network, we would, sometimes sell it to Netflix and such.
I see. And we're jumping ahead a little bit. So a lot I want to go back to, but what year was that when you? Because was that Funimation Now? Is that what you guys rebranded to?
Right. That? It was eventually branded to that, but we had started work on that like in the early 2000s. Really? I mean, somewhere in the early 2000s. Okay. We started work on it. Really, probably about 2003 or 4, we started work on it.
So, I mean, that's probably around the time that Cuban was doing it was starting to become like a thing.
Yeah, and right? Crunchyroll had just started, their piracy site about that time.
Yeah, so they started as a kind of like a torrent site or something like that.
Well, it's basically it's a pirate site.
Interesting. And they made their way to legitimacy.
Yeah, but then they had to drop all of their content that was pirated and tried to license the rights direct. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to that. But I want to hear, I guess, what the initial Cartoon Network conversations were like. Because that was to me, I mean, at the time, it was such a groundbreaking concept, the Toonami concept, right? Because it was really the cornerstone of that was Japanese media.
That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
So did they contact you guys and say like, let's go? And
yes. So by then, these cable channels had really started getting some traction. Cartoon Network's probably about 50 million homes or so by then, which is still not full coverage. You really wanted to be, 80 million homes, again, households, TV households. A 100% full coverage of America was probably around 110 million households at that time.
Interesting.
But you needed that 80 to get the national advertising and all that stuff. And you always had to have the top markets. Every top 20 market had to be on your list, or you're kind of dead meat anyway. So there were probably around 50, and we had syndicated with one syndication company the first year. It was Dragonball, and then we switched to a different syndication company in the next year, which was 96 and 96. I think it was the fall of 96 season. Anyway, and we switched to Haim Saban's company. Saban was a kids syndication company at the time, as well as they were doing Power Rangers.
That was like the cat with the hat. I think when you watch the initial Dragon Ball, like their logo.
No, that was
Toei.
Toei. Yeah.
Okay.
That's Toei's logo, the studio behind this show.
Okay.
That did all the animation and owned the rights. Now Saban got famous for bringing over Power Rangers from Japan. So they did the whole Power Ranger series, and they also had a syndication company as well. And so they, and we convinced Toei we had to jump to Z, from Dragon Ball to Z. So we were able to convince Toei that we could, and they allowed us to jump to Z because, they understood our logic on that. And so we jumped to Z and syndicated that program. But by then, the kids syndication industry was starting to fall apart. And as you know, almost no kids, pretty much there is no kids syndication industry. There hasn't been for, decades now.
Yeah. Now it's just
so,
all streaming and YouTube.
Right. There's these, you're right. Even not even the major channels have them anymore. Or the cable, the major networks don't have it anymore. But anyway, so syndication died for kids. And one of the impetuses for why it died was because these stations, their only revenue from any show they picked up in syndication, again, was to get advertisers to advertise, right, on those shows. And turns out in the kids industry, there's not a lot of advertisers. Like, who's going to advertise? Anheuser-Busch? No, I don't think so. Car companies, so a lot of big, you can't just live off of Hasbro and Mattel, and so
I see.
What happened was then the stations got smart and said, okay, to pick up your kids show, you have to guarantee me you're going to buy this many ads for the show on my station. Well, the only way to do that as a studio is you got to get a Hasbro or Mattel or somebody big to say, okay, we'll make a 6 million ad guarantee for 6 million on a national basis. You split it up by territory, of course, by TV station. So that station gets 20,000, whatever.
By like the Nielsen rating viewerships and things like that.
Yeah, usually it's by size of that territory, but
okay.
But they know like how many relative size of each territory. So for their audience. So and that number just kept jumping up and up and up till it was $15 million. An ad guarantee a toy company had to give on a show that wasn't even yet a hit. That just killed the kids market, syndication markets. None of these toy companies and stuff were willing to do that. I mean, they were at first, but it just collapsed on its own. And so there is no such thing as kids syndication.
And so did the ad dollars start to come? Because I remember as a kid, quite a high number of like advertisements from food companies.
Mm-hmm.
Did they kind of come in and diversify that revenue stream?
Yeah. There's still, there's some still autos, they're hoping to catch, but not that much. Yeah, food, obviously, like, fast food especially.
Go-Gurt.
Yeah,
McDonald's.
Things like that.
McDonald's,
oh, well, yeah,
Happy
of course.
Meals,
Kids food products for sure.
Yeah.
Are in that category, cereals, Lucky Charms, whatever, So there were, it's not like it was there wasn't some good group, but there's no way even a General Mills could put enough ad dollars to clear a $15 million national, show. So you really depended on the master toy company.
I see.
So,
and speaking of toy companies, did you guys license? Did you have the rights, I guess, to license Dragon Ball to toys?
Yes,
you bought like a universal license to Dragon Ball.
Wow, that's right. All rights except live action rights. We couldn't get live action rights, and we couldn't get underlying music rights. The show to make CDs or albums or anything like that.
There's some good music on there.
No, so and which is about the same even today for most shows. You can't get those rights. So yeah, but all the rights, which is the main ones, of course, being home video, TV streaming, merchandise, theatrical.
So that was a big part, I guess, of your revenue generation was working with Hasbro, Mattel. Were they starting to? When did they call?
Yeah, well, with Dragon Ball was Bandai.
Yeah.
So Bandai was the toy company behind it. The same toy company that released Power Rangers.
And Bandai did, correct me if I'm wrong, their own streaming, or I'm sorry, their own, like, they basically licensed themselves a lot, right? Or,
yeah, they had their own.
Like Gundam was through
that's
them.
Right. That's right. They had Bandai Entertainment Company, which
that's right.
Yeah, was trying to do the same thing Funimation was doing. Yes.
Okay. Wow. So you guys hit lightning in a bottle with Dragon Ball.
Oh, yeah. Well, we had hoped so, though. Remember how big a hit it was already overseas. So, and not remember by then, it wasn't just a hit in Asia. It had hit #1 in Mexico, France,
Hmm.
Spain. So
Really?
it already crossed cultures. So that's what made it so much easier for us to pick that particular shows because we already knew it was cross cultural.
In other interviews I've watched that you've done, I think that was that a core part of your strategy, right? Like you wanted to stick to the hits, as
Oh
you
yeah,
say.
yeah, absolutely. That was the whole point: is stick to the hits.
And what was the second show or that you
Second
licensed?
big show we acquired was Yu Yu Hakusho.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's
good
my
show.
favorite.
Great show. Yes.
I've never gotten past like maybe 5 to 10 episodes past the Dark Tournament.
Oh, okay.
Because I guess like the narrative to me just it wasn't as compelling, but all the way through that, it was just one of the best. It's so good, and it's serialized like Dragon Ball.
Oh yeah,
which was
absolutely.
a Japanese phenomenon at the time, right?
That's right. A lot of the TV networks that when we first pitched Dragon Ball, they said kids don't have the attention span for a serialized show like Dragon Ball. You have to conclude every episode at a time, right? One story in each episode, period. Of course, the executives were wrong about that completely.
Of course, yeah. Because you just say, hey, look at Power Rangers.
Well, it's
that's
just
semi-serialized.
And look at what happened in other countries. You know, it's just like those who tried it realized, oh, kids are kind of smart. I mean, they get it. They just didn't look at international data. That's all. They were just too had their blinders on myopically. So anyway, the second thing they said, the reason it would fail is that they said, oh, the characters change. You can't like Goku grows up, gets married, has a kid. Like you're crazy. Like their example would be like, have you ever seen anything change about Mickey Mouse in decades? And that was their attitude, right? And we're like, well, that's what makes the story so great and why people stick with a series like this, right? I mean, and so we said that was a wrong-headed look at where the entertainment industry should be going, and of course, those executives at the major networks disagreed with me.
How did you clear those hurdles?
Well, none of them bought the show
until later, and then they called you and were like, "Hey."
Well, but Cartoon Network saw it, the vision, and like I said, they were smaller, so they wanted to grow, so they're willing to take a lot more risk, right? And so, A, they want to take more risk, and B, there was a fan of Dragon Ball in their programming department inside Cartoon Network.
Was that the Jason DeMarco guy?
I think his name was Sean.
Okay.
And he really tried to convince Cartoon Network to pick up Dragon Ball. And so then he called us, actually, while we were struggling with syndication, when the whole kids syndication market is falling apart. And we said, well, we see what's happening with the kids syndication market. We don't want to stick with this strategy. We think cable's an up-and-coming new thing. Let's just go all in with Cartoon Network. And so that was our decision. They went all in with us, and the rest is history because they just advertised the living crud out of the show 24/7. Yeah, and we just pumped them with the content and everything else we could do, and including marketing, and it just exploded. Yeah,
and like they featured it through Toonami from the start, or do you know from the start?
Yeah,
Toonami was so innovative at the time.
Yeah, I don't remember if they called it Toonami right out of the gate. That I don't remember, but that was the concept. It became a after-school programming, basically.
And Toonami too, like the entire premise of Toonami was serialized as well, because you had Tom, the host, Tom 1, 2, 3. He would like die, and then another one would come, and like kids were interested in the Tom story, and I think they were also using like 3D at a very early time.
Oh yeah,
their animators were good. Our the intro to this podcast is heavily based on Toonami, like the beats. I'll have to listen to it after this, but there's a lot of beats like as the spaceship was coming in, and we based our beat heavily on a couple Toonami beats, and then we used Cowboy Bebop, where Spike says "bang" at the end as soon as it cuts out, you know. So a ton of fun. But I guess let me get back to this. After Toonami, there was a point when Toonami started to lose steam, right? Because it was super hot. And then it started to go down. Was that when streaming was starting to come up? It's probably like 2010, 12, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think the more of the problem was that Nickelodeon had decided that their strategy was going to be comedy. And comedy gets both males and females, right? And so they could maximize their audience with that. But what Toonami and Cartoon Network's strategy was let's win in one category first, because they were a small network at the initial part. So they went after boys action. So they went whole hog to boys action, used Dragon Ball Z and all that. Once they had established that they were the boys action network, you know, then this is where the ratings started wavering some, because two things happened. One is, okay, now they're a really big network, you know, but you know, the percentage of women they were getting, or girls they were getting, wasn't as high, obviously. The second problem was we depleted all the best anime shows that were sitting in the can and just waiting for decades to get released, right? Or not sometimes not decades, but a long time, right? And so you had the cream of the crop they could pick up first. So they get Dragon Ball, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever, you know,
Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah. So because they're all sitting there in the can already, because they're years old in Japan. Well, once you blow through all the major hits, it's like, well, oops, what do you buy next?
Yeah.
Right? Now the risk is higher, and every show is not a hit anymore. And so you start getting a lot of misses. And so that's what started happening.
Yeah, that's when they picked up Hamtaro. You remember Hamtaro?
Yeah, well,
That
actually that was going to be a miss no matter what. But
the talking hamsters. I actually did kind of like watching that. I thought it was funny.
But they'd pick up shows like Bakugan and stuff where they were so toy focused that they were probably sharing in the toy revenue, or in some way, or something was happening, or they were getting big ad dollars from the toy company as part of getting that on TV. But the show itself wasn't strong enough to get the rate, enough of a rate. It's a decent show, but you know what I mean? And so they were doing the kind of Bakugan thing.
I've never watched. Is Bakugan the same as Digimon? Or is it
No. Those are
just
totally
different.
Separate. Yeah.
I actually saw that in Target today.
But Digimon is another example of, oh, we have Pokemon, let's try Digimon. You know,
yeah.
So, you know, but
Digimon did pretty well, I think. It wasn't as big.
Better than Bakugan.
Yeah. And then they had Beyblade was huge for the toy market, because they started selling those bowls
in toys, but not as good in ratings.
Yeah.
And so that's and as a network, ratings are everything. So, you know, even if you're getting a slice of, you know, you're getting some ad revenue guaranteed by the toy company and all these other things, it's still just ratings. And so.
And okay, so if I'm getting this timeline wrong, let me know. I'm just trying to unpack this from a time perspective. As like perhaps cable started to descend, they take all those shows in the can. Streaming was picking up. You said you were working on it mid 2000s. What was that challenge like? Because I don't know anything about that, but I imagine you have to have servers. Did you have to get buy real estate and house these things, or what was that like to get into that business?
Right. So streaming did take some years, of course, to build up. It's not as fast as people may imagine it took. So the cable networks are obviously strong for a very long time. But yeah, so in streaming, most people outsourced it, you know, to other people. A lot of the work or the video platform was outsourced or white labeled. like we did.
So you guys did that initially?
Yeah, and eventually, of course, all our stuff was AWS. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
Amazon. So we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
part of it. But we never, so it's their servers and everything else. So we don't really do our own, I mean, we don't do our own. We're not our own internet company per se, like that, like
Yeah.
AWS is. So yeah, so it's, a lot of that's third party, and or white labeled and partially, third party. So that way, but so that's how we did it, um, and still, really in streaming, it's still, it was nascent enough that it took a while to get more and more viewers to actually start paying money for every month.
Yeah,
for
like
the
a subscription service.
Yeah.
And it was also coincided with like the speed of internet as people started to slowly get faster internet.
Sure.
And what prompted the brand change from Funimation to Funimation Now? Was that like more of a impetus on, hey, you can actually stream this?
Well, the Now label is only for the streaming service.
Okay.
So the whole company still was Funimation.
Okay.
Everything else is brand just Funimation. Funimation Now is just the product offerings name.
Got it.
Streaming platforms offering name.
And then eventually, though, Funimation Now and Funimation it just all became Funimation, right? Or because I remember
basically,
during COVID, that 2-3 month period window when time paused, basically. Funimation Now was the primary application that I used, like on my smart TV, to watch and consume anime.
Yeah,
and I basically watched all of Dragon Ball Z and all of Yu Yu Hakusho. And then boom, Crunchyroll happened years later. So as I understand it, you sold your company twice.
That's right.
How does that happen? That's like a dream come true for an
yeah, it is actually. Yes, we sold it to a public company the first time. They were trying to go from being a pick, pack, and ship company to vertically integrating into content. And so they bought 3 companies in a row that were in the entertainment industry, like within over the span of only like 2 years. And we were the third one.
Who was it again? Sorry.
The company's name was Navar.
Navar.
Yeah.
Is that a U.S. company?
Yeah. It was out of Minneapolis.
Okay.
And so they bought us the first time.
Like 100%?
Like
private equity deal?
It was 100% outright purchase.
Okay.
All cash transaction. And then I stayed on as CEO. But I think the issue was their strategy wasn't working at either the corporate level or the entertainment level, because most of their revenue was being made out of pick, pack, shipping, and warehousing box software. And their biggest clients would be Costco and Sam's and Walmart, right? Well, as you know, everybody moved away from box software to just downloading the software. Nobody buys box software, right?
When you say box software, you mean like DVDs, Blu-ray?
No, box software like Adobe and
okay.
Acrobat.
Like you were in
Adobe
the grocery store and you see
Norton,
an AOL disc.
McAfee and Norton Buck.
Okay.
And the Microsoft Office, and all those were sold in boxes, primarily at these big box retailers, and that's how you buy your software, right? Then you bring the discs home and you download it all onto your computer. Yeah, right. Well, obviously that went immediately toward downloading because nobody wants to. Well, I mean, there's no other reason to buy a box software.
It doesn't make sense, yeah.
Right. And so their business started to decline because that movement was obviously starting to happen. And so they had problems at the corporate level, and then they were having trouble with entertainment companies because honestly, they just didn't really know what to do with entertainment companies, right? And so
it was kind of like
just a bit of a mismatch.
Side business.
Yeah, it was a mismatch, and so that eventually led to a management-led buyout that I did of the company. So I got together with some friends of mine, Darwin and Doug Deason out of Dallas, and John Kelbs out of Southlake, and we bought the company back.
Were those gentlemen in the entertainment industry?
No, not at all.
No.
No.
Because Dallas has some other quote unquote blockbusters that are from, like Blockbuster was from Dallas.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's
and Blockbuster's biggest competitor, I think, was from Dallas. So Dallas kind of actually has a decent history in the entertainment industry. Did you?
Yeah, but by then, remember, now I had 10 years of experience under my belt running an anime company. I understood the entertainment industry perfectly fine, and all my executives were from the entertainment industry. So
Yeah.
I didn't need a investor that was also from the investor.
For sure.
I needed an investor that would support me and be just, willing to be a very supportive board of directors, right? And
Yeah, because once you get to a certain point, you want an investor that says, okay, here's the money. What's my update?
Yeah.
Instead of here's the money, here's what you need to do.
That's right. That's what happened.
That's good.
And because I already knew these guys, was very helpful, right? And so since they were my friends already,
Yeah. It's like, hey,
yeah. And so it was a great match. We went in, I still like co-invest with those guys, and get together with them and stuff, of course. But yeah, so we took it back private. Then we ran it and grew it quite a bit, and then sold it all to Sony Pictures.
And that was in 19? No,
Well, technically we sold it late 2017.
17.
And then I was required to stay 2 years. They had a key man on me.
Okay.
To stay. So I had this part of the transaction. I had to stay 2 years. So, and they made me keep 5% of the equity of the company as well. As part
That's
of that
good.
deal. Right. So
Made you keep? You didn't want to? Did you want to wash your hands?
I didn't have
or?
I had no problems keeping 5%. So unless I was really going to check out for those 2 years.
Yeah.
But I knew I wasn't going to check out.
So. Oh, they made you keep 5% during the 2-year period.
Yeah, so that I wouldn't check out,
Yeah.
Oh, the guy's, look at how much the size check we wrote him.
Yeah.
Why is he going to come into the office at all,
sure.
right?
So they kind of held that
so they
feet
held
to the
that,
fire.
yes,
on
that's
that.
right. They said, well, we're not going to pay you this, you have 5% of the company still, and after 2 years, we'll sell it back to you. I mean, we'll buy it from you, guarantee buy it from you, right? So there's a big guarantee buy clause to take it out. And so that's what happened. They bought it out.
And then I guess wrapping up
But 2 years later, they valued the company from $100 million higher than they bought it the first time. So
That's great.
We grew it quite nicely during that 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And the Funimation streaming was awesome. I still remember the because you can't see it today because it's Crunchyroll now, but it was ding 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 the jingle you guys had.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys crushed it with the streaming. So I guess that kind of rounds it out. Like, and then did Sony diversify into they merged Funimation with Crunchyroll?
So then
like
they bought
2021 or
Crunchyroll.
something?
That's right. Yeah, they eventually bought Crunchyroll, and they bought Right Stuff, which was an e-commerce platform.
Okay.
And they merged in Madman from Australia, New Zealand. So those were some of the big moves they did, and a big move with partnering with Aniplex. So those were some of the big things they did after, because Aniplex basically owned Madman, by the way. So
And Aniplex has been around.
they've
while.
been a long time in Japan, a powerful anime company in
Yeah.
Japan.
Interesting. And how did
Lots of hit shows.
Yeah, Aniplex, right? When it starts, how did Crunchyroll? So now we're kind of over with the Funimation saga for now, but Crunchyroll was a pirating site.
Yeah, at the beginning.
And they dropped all their content.
Right.
And then, like, how do you lose your content and then become relevant again? Right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting story.
Yeah, it is. But remember, these are really early days where Funimation wasn't really competing in streaming, right? So they were first movers, in streaming through piracy first, of course. And then but when they had to raise capital. So once they proved that, hey, there's a real market anime, we have all these loyal people. Even if we dump all our content and immediately started buying it legitimately from Japan, they convinced some venture capitalists that it was worth the bet that they can transition. So,
I see.
Because the venture capitalists are never going to, of course, fund a pirate site. So,
Yeah.
and so,
What an
that's
interesting
what
conversation. Like, hey, we're not legit, but we can be legit if you give us money.
Right.
Huh.
Basically.
So they got sued left and right, I'm sure.
No, because the people that would sue would be the Japanese companies that whose content was being pirated.
Okay.
Right. And
What an interesting thing.
Right. And so what happened was because Japanese just basically don't, it's still old Japanese culture, at least, is you don't sue,
Is that true? That's a thing in Japan?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially back in the 90s, for sure.
What's the, I guess, being a Japanese American, what is like the cultural reason for that? Is it like a...
It's just very cultural. That people don't like to use the legal system over there to, and sue each other.
So they like to have a meeting and just...
Yeah, work it out somehow. But really, it's a lot more around pressure on getting blackballed, for example, on future deals if you don't do it this, And so that's how a lot more of that happens. If you don't keep this friendly relationship, then you aren't going to get our next 10 shows or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Things like that start to happen, right? And so
that's interesting. I love Japan. I've been with Pepper one time, by myself another. I'd love to go back. I have friends that go there all the time. A good buddy of mine on this podcast, Q Harrison, he's head of growth for Mark Cuban Companies. He owns learnjapanese.com. I hope to go back with him again soon, but it's truly an amazing culture and amazing place. I tell people, like, if you don't go there, you haven't really traveled.
Mm-hmm.
It'll change your life. Did you go to Japan regularly when you're working on these deals?
Oh yeah.
Do you still go?
No, not after I retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have family there still?
Oh yeah. Well, the only people from my entire family that are here are me and my sister, and my parents moved. So
to North Texas?
No, to West Lafayette, Indiana.
That's right. You started with that. What brought you guys to Indiana?
My dad got an offer to become a professor of electrical engineering at Purdue.
Okay.
And so he accepted that offer.
Okay. And then what brought you to Texas?
Well, all the seed capital came from the Fukunaga family here.
I see.
And in addition to the capital, they owned things like office buildings and other infrastructural things like They had their own internal, accounting staff and all these other things. And so they just said, well, look, we're just going to give you free rent in one of our office buildings, and we'll just, let you go ahead and use the accountant and do all this stuff all for free if you locate in Texas. And so, I mean, if we build the staff up here. And so we started building the staff up there. So we never hired anybody in California.
What was that like for you going from Silicon Valley? This was 95? Right.
Well, that's when we started the company in late, 94. Technically, we didn't release the show until late 95, but for the first time. But we didn't move till 98.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we took the first few years still staying in Silicon Valley and trying to grow the company.
Did you like Texas when you moved here?
Yeah. Actually, it's a lot better place for kids to grow up. Cost of living is much better. So
I feel like it was so different then than it is now. Like now I think it's becoming, especially Dallas, Austin, it's becoming almost one of the centers of the United States. Like so much energy is moving here. We've got the Texas Stock Exchange coming, gambling may be legalized soon in Texas, which the Sands Corporation has already bought a controlling interest in the Mavs. You see Elon, you see Joe Rogan, you see all these, all these Silicon Valley companies putting in Austin. It was different in the late 90s, though.
Yeah.
It was almost like kind of agrarian, right?
Yeah. I mean, That's right, and it's become a financial hub as well. Telecom always has had a long track record here, as you know. Um,
AT&T.
so yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so business friendly that there's a lot of benefits of being in Texas over a state like California for sure.
Absolutely. The income tax alone,
Yeah, that's right.
you know. Okay, so we've asked a couple on our social media, ask people to comment
Okay.
if they had any questions for you. And I think the biggest one is what are your favorite shows or manga? And it doesn't have to be, ones that you've licensed.
Right.
Obviously, Dragon Ball.
Obviously, Dragon Ball is a great show. I think it's. I think we bought a few male action show, and we're starting to be known as male action in the early days. And then I suddenly bought Fruits Basket, and the rest of the industry kind of all were talking, what is Gen lost his mind? Why would he buy Fruits Basket and all that? But it became a big home video hit for us because it was
Fruits
just a
Basket.
great show. Yeah, the show is so good. The original Fruits Basket, the very, very first one from the 90s. The 90s. Yeah, I think it's the 90s or maybe. Yeah, something late 90s, early 2000s. And so
Mr. Pepper, do you think you could bring up Fruits Basket? I'd love to see what the visuals are of that.
But we then we had pretty decent. The biggest hits we've had were like Full Metal Alchemist, which was a great show. Attack on Titan was a great show.
So good.
But then nothing came close to Dragon Ball until My Hero Academia.
Okay.
My Hero Academia was the first time it may have in one annual cycle made more than Dragon Ball's, which in 24 other years it didn't. Nothing ever beat.
Nothing
Dragon
came
Ball.
close.
Yeah, not even all the new shows. Even when we had no new Dragon Ball shows, we still made more money on Dragon Ball. So
Fruits Basket's one of your favorites. What else?
Yeah, and so those other ones I just mentioned now, I think we released some pretty good movies recently, at least as I was toward retirement. We had a great movie called Your Name that was a really nice movie. We just had so many decent, strong shows that, gosh, it's so hard to,
I mean, it's endless.
Yeah,
I haven't seen My Hero Academia. I haven't seen any of the ones that you've mentioned. I know what they are, but I've never really sat down and watched them. As you can see, I'm a big Gundam fan. Did you ever get into Gundam at all?
Well, so we never were able to represent Gundam. So
that was Bandai Entertainment.
Yeah, that was Bandai Entertainment.
Yeah.
And so I had never really watched it. It did decently, but I think it didn't do as well as everybody had hoped. Though, in the U.S. market. So
I'm hoping for a live action Gundam one day. I've toyed around with the idea myself just because I want it to happen so bad of writing a Gundam screenplay. There's a particular series called the 8th MS team, 8th Mobile Suit Team. And it's like a very microscopic story of what's happening in the greater war in the Universal Century era. I think it'd be so cool because Pacific Rim did so well, right? And that's a Japanese show, I believe.
Yeah, inspired.
Yeah, and it did great with Idris Elba. I think it would just. There's so many fans. I think it'd be fantastic. Dragon Ball kind of struggled with the live action.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had nothing to do with it though, by the way.
It's so hard to do live action with Dragon Ball though, because getting the persona, the visual persona of the characters in live action just like doesn't really work.
Right. It's a tricky one. I agree. And it didn't help that the budget was so low.
Yeah.
So
have you seen I'll have to show you later, but there's these. I actually have hope for live action Dragon Ball in the future because there's these beautiful AI animations that are coming out of Trunks and Goku, and it kind of nails from this hyper realistic 3D perspective what their character feels like from an imagery world. I think there's going to be some really cool stuff one day.
Yeah.
Be a lot of fun.
Mhm.
So, hey, any other questions before we log off for today? Or
No, I don't have any questions.
Pepper? Good to go? Again, Mr. Fukunaga, thank you for
All
coming.
right. You're welcome.